Chilly conditions. If you think it's cold here, just go north. My son's in Minneapolis this weekend. It feels like Minneapolis here. And the Philadelphia Eagles are a chilly franchise right now. This guy covers all things New York and Philadelphia. He is a one-time winner of our WNST sports contest here. He's still doing it up there at IP in Philadelphia as well as the Fan in New York and at NJ.com. You can follow his journey out on Twitter and see that his little one is an Orioles fan. He is Joe Giglio. You can follow him on Twitter at Joe Giglio Sports. That's Giglio. One of our defending champions. We welcome him back. What's up, Joe? How you been, man?
I've been very well, Nestor. How are you?
I'm all right. I'll be better Sunday if we get through these cheesesteak eaters coming down here. The Eagles were doing pretty well at the beginning. I know it's sort of fallen apart as many expected. Where are you on all this? You spend a lot of time talking Eagles football. I'm sure August and September was a different conversation that we're having now that the leaves have fallen.
Oh, it has been. It's almost been a tale of 2 or 3 different seasons. I think if you asked people in August, Nestor, if this season would play out this way, 5-8 with 3 games to go, people would have said, yeah, that's about right. First-year head coach. At that point, Sam Bradford was still the quarterback. Didn't even know if Wentz was going to play this year. They trade away Bradford. They go 3-0, though, and they win those first 3 games, especially a blowout win at home over the Steelers in Week 3, heading into a bye week. So it wasn't just the high of that. It was 2 weeks of people thinking about the playoffs and the Eagles being, way ahead of schedule. And then the bottom has fallen out. It's been frustrating for a lot of people because a lot of these losses have been close one-possession games. They're just not talented enough yet. This was a rebuilding year. This was what everyone thought they would be. They just took a very strange path to get to 5-8 with a 3-0 start.
Well, when you're teetering on the brink to begin with, and the Ravens are also guilty of this, and you start losing guys, key guys, they're not going to be much without Darren Sproles. They're not much with the offensive line they have right now. And certainly for my buddy Jimmy Schwartz, who went up there and took a gig in the hopes of being one of those top 5 defenses, it worked for a little while, right? I mean, that front 7 had a little something going the first month, especially in that Steelers game, and then the defense really didn't have it anymore, right?
Yeah, that's been a big problem. I mean, everyone realized the offense, and you mentioned the offensive line. They're missing their best player because he was suspended for 10 games. This is actually the last one he will miss. He could come back for the final 2, Lane Johnson. But the offensive line is shaky. They don't have a running game. Outside of Jordan Matthews, who's a good but not great receiver, they have no weapons on offense. So the defense needed to carry this thing. It's done it in spurts, but their corners are so bad, Nestor. I mean, really, anyone can get by these guys, that if they don't get big pressure from the front 7, especially that front 4, they're screwed. And Jim Schwartz has tried everything. And, they paid Fletcher Cox over $100 million to be their star defensive tackle. And he's disappeared at times this year. And when that has happened, the Eagles defense, I mean, at times it looks great, and at times it's just they can't stop anybody.
Well, the good news that I've heard from everyone who believes in the Eagles is they really believe they have a franchise quarterback. They went an incredibly bizarre way about going about that. I mean, just about everything involved in that franchise the last 3 or 4 years has been easy to question, I would say, especially if you're doing sports radio up there.
Oh, yeah, and it was a bizarre way to go get the quarterback. I mean, they went into last offseason saying they needed to find a young quarterback to develop, but that was to the point where they re-signed Sam Bradford. I don't think anyone thought that quarterback would come with the number 2 pick in the draft, especially they weren't even in the top 10 to begin with. And Howie Rose from the GM wheeled and dealed, and he did a good job to do it. And I think they have the right quarterback. I like Wentz. He reminds me a lot of Flacco, his story, Division I AA. Wasn't really supposed to play from the beginning, but a lot of different circumstances happened for each guy. I think Wentz a little bit more athletic in terms of running and getting out of the pocket, but both big, strong arm. I think he's got it. Just right now, he's just surrounded by a lot of guys that don't have it, and they're asking him to throw the football a lot. I mean, he's on pace to set the record for Eagles throws in a season, which is kind of crazy to imagine. I think he'd be second if he stays in this pace in terms of rookies all time, only behind Andrew Luck a few years ago. So they're asking a lot of him in his first year.
He is Joe Giglio. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Joe Giglio Sports and at NJ.com, as well as at WIP and The Fan in New York, doing some sports radio, as he did here in Baltimore with us for a period of time a number of years ago. It's Giglio. It's Joe Giglio Sports. For the Eagles, and you talk about Joe Flacco being from across the bridge there, somewhere in the swamps of Jersey and Audubon, where you're located, and the Eagles not having a quarterback and everything they've gone through. Joe, Douglas was the guy who was responsible for drafting Joe Flacco. I wrote about that in Purple Rain, too. I've known Joe for a couple of decades as Big Joe D and the Turk. He's the new blood up there and the football mind, and there's been a lot of criticism of Howie Roseman not being a football guy, not having a grown-up in charge there. Obviously, the Chip Kelly thing blew up in everyone's face. How's Big Joe D doing up there? Is he getting some time to sort of put this thing together and really be in charge of the operation there?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be a big off season for him and the Eagles. And when he came in last year, Nestor, Howie talked about giving him the opportunity and kind of revamping the entire front office to try to put that grading system and revamp how they look at players. And I think they're going to use what the Ravens have done. We've heard about the Patriots, what they've done for all those years, and having everyone on the same page. That's been the problem with the Eagles. They're all on different pages, and I don't think people even know how to evaluate Howie Roseman, because for a year, Chip Kelly had him hiding in a broom closet. He wasn't allowed to do anything. In the past, he was in charge, but Andy Reid was there. So now it feels like it's Howie's room again, but he's got this guy next to him, Joe Douglas, that's making people feel a little bit better, because like you said, that knock's always been on Howie. He was a lawyer. He's not a football guy. He's made some good picks, bad picks. Him and Joe Douglas will be tied to Wentz. If that kid can play, this franchise will start winning again soon.
Well, that kid can play, right? I mean, that no one is questioning that at this point. That the question is now, how do you put people around him that aren't, the bust of Nelson Aguilar, right?
Exactly. And the weapons so far this year, I mean, it's a cast of characters they've tried out there, and they've tried everything from 3 tight ends to 5 wide receivers to, trading for a guy like Dorial Green-Beckham, who was a high pick last year, but looks the part, doesn't really play the part. Aguilar's been a bust. That's going to be the number one thing for them. You'll see it on Sunday. Their problem is, 7 out of 10 plays, they win the play. They win the play at the line of scrimmage. They have Wentz, but the problem is they give up too many big plays on defense, and they don't create any on offense.
Joe Giglio covered all things sports in Philly and New York, somewhere in the swamps of Jersey. Look at Hart, dude. I know you're a baseball guy, so I want to, turn the attention toward the Orioles. As your little one has the Oriole hat on out on your Twitter as well. I don't think anybody expected the Orioles to make a splash. I mean, this Wellington Castillo thing will impress no one, and especially for the bleeding hearts out there that wanted to give Matt Wieters another $17 million here. I just don't see that the Orioles are going to be an improved product next year. I know we'll talk about Gausman, we'll talk about Tillman, we'll talk about Bundy, Chance Sisco and all of that stuff, but the Red Sox and the Yankees did real things here so far, and we know they're reloading. We know they'll have more money, and especially with what the Yankees did at the trading deadline, which was really refortify for the next 5 years their young players. And I think it's heartbreaking here anytime Manny Machado is portrayed as a future Yankee. But, as an Oriole guy that watched Messina go that route, I sort of feel like Machado's not going to be here a couple years from now.
It certainly feels like that's the path it's going down. And I think you could throw the Phillies in there, too, as they're clearing out money. And they have literally, Nestor, they have $0 on the books for 2019, which is that crazy big free agent class, including Harper and Machado. And I mean, the Orioles' lack of big moves or splash doesn't ever surprise me. It always surprises me how well Buck Showalter gets them to play, despite all this. But I kind of thought heading into the last couple of years, maybe there'd be more of a sense of urgency, because Machado and I believe Adam Jones are both free agents in 2019. I mean, this run here they've been on, which has been, they've overachieved basically every year. It feels like there's a clock ticking on it, and it's 2 more years until Machado can walk out the door, and then what? I mean, the whole thing has to reset again, but they haven't acted aggressive. The Batista thing, I just thought that was a ploy because they didn't want to pay him and give up a draft pick.
Well, that's always the ploy, right? I mean, 15 years ago, I'm covering Confederate money and Sid Thrift. It really is no different, and they play poor, and they play that we're not a big market and all that, David and Goliath, and, after the old man's put $2 billion in his pocket, it's disgusting, but, lying from a podium, it's something we're going to get used to in this country over the next 4 years, quite frankly.
Well, that's true. Unfortunately, it is. And the crazy part is, as inactive as they'll be, I'm sure they'll get one of these sluggers because there's a surplus of them and supply and demand. They'll find this year's Trumbo or this year's Nelson Cruz sometime in February. But when the season starts, they'll probably be competitive, and they'll probably somehow be in it because this is what they do every year with that bullpen and Showalter. But it is uninspiring every winter to watch how they go about things.
Yeah, and it's also uninspiring when there's 15,000 people in the stadium and they're in the pennant race in September. That part of it, and the price raises, and the age, and downtown, and the riots, and it's really led to a different kind of Orioles franchise now. And as I say, Renner, don't worry, the bar will be lowered. I mean, that's the Orioles. I mean, the expectations never really there for the Orioles that they're going to go all. And if you're an Orioles fan, over watching this over a quarter of a century, there's no reason to be overconfident. They're not going to make you overconfident.
Yeah, I mean, as you're saying this, I think I'm getting texts once a week from my father-in-law who lives down in Columbia, and he's always texting me, what are they going to do, where they're going to go, who they're going to get. And
they're going to do nothing. That's what they're going to sign Welling to Castillo,
exactly.
Right, yeah. Well, that's it. But the Red Sox don't, right? And to that point, whatever Sherrington left around, Dombrowski sort of went all in on this sale thing. I hope he doesn't cut up their throwback jerseys because they're lovely. But, they want to win. There's a real urgency there that if you're a Red Sox fan, you could say, well, maybe it's the wrong move, but they're not afraid of making moves. I mean, there's a high-risk tightrope thing that goes on anytime you make those kind of moves, and sometimes when Andy McPhail would make them, they worked out, and 6-7 years later, the team's still effective because of that. But the Red Sox, they just sort of retool, and it really feels like the Yankees are, they're going to try to win 90 or 95 games this year. They're not into that, well, we're going to settle at being a 500 team, and maybe if one of the pitchers matures, they're going to go all in.
They do, and they're also trying to reset it, too, with their farm system, so in a couple of years, they'll have a bunch of money to spend and not be on the hook for a lot of big contracts. And, yeah, it feels like the Yankees have a plan. The Red Sox plan is clear. They're going to try to win a World Series or two the next few years. And the Orioles, every year, it just feels like you get to spring training, and they're going to do their best to get through the next 6 months. And Buck does a good job doing that, but that's not a long-term plan. And then you look up, and I just have a bad feeling that eventually it's going to end. It's going to end poorly with the Orioles in a couple of years.
Sadness prevails. At least the Nationals were big losers in the winter meetings too, right? I mean, they got fleeced, right?
Oh, they got fleeced. They didn't get the guy they wanted. And now you talk about a clock ticking on the Orioles. The clock's ticking on them, and they've already acknowledged it. That Bryce Harper's basically walking out the door for a $400 million check somewhere. So that's a tough pill to swallow for them.
Well, they've had no problem spending money, though, right? I mean, if you are a Nationals fan and you've been there from the beginning, I don't know that you can argue with what they've obviously not had a whole lot of good fortune in October and with Strasburg and some other situations and the Matt Williams thing and, all of that Papelbon nonsense in the dugout, 16 months ago. But they're going to win 90 games again this year. They're going to have a chance to play in October, right?
Oh, yeah, they'll be the favorite in that division. I mean, the Mets pitching, if it's healthy, will challenge them, but they'll be the favorite. It's just, it's interesting. I think they made that trade with Eaton, with the White Sox. They gave up a lot because they know they only have him for 2 more years, and they're going to try to win something with him. Otherwise, they're probably going to remember like one of those teams like the Mariners and Griffey back in the day when they had all those great players and they didn't win a thing.
Joe Giglio doing all things sports up. Tell everybody what you do up there. You're New Jersey, NJ.com, but you're also doing sports radio in Philly and New York because, quite frankly, you live in the middle by the theme park.
Exactly. I am right by Six Flags, right in the middle of Jersey, for those of you that have driven up. Yeah, I'm all over the place. So I'm writing for NJ.com. I cover some baseball for them, host some podcasts, one on the Eagles, one on the Giants, one on Rutgers, and then I'm doing some sports radio nights and weekends in Philly and in New York.
Do the baboons still jump on your car at the fun park?
I haven't gone in a while, even though I live down the road there, but I believe they still do. My son is almost 2. We're probably going to have to take him soon. I can let you know. It's been 15 years. Please send me a picture if the baboons are ripping off your rearview mirrors. I will do that, Nestor. Joe, it's great catching up with you, man. I'm glad you and your family are doing well. Holiday love your way up in Jersey, and next time I come up there and hang out with Bruce, I'll stop by, okay? I appreciate that, Nestor. Take care and enjoy the game Sunday. I've paid plenty of your state fare on the turnpike lately, driving back and forth. I'm appalled at the toll rates. Well, I'll be down there next weekend for Christmas with the family, so I appreciate that. Bring me a cheesesteak. We'll see you soon. Joe Giglio, he is at Joe Giglio Sports. That's Giglio, as well as at NJ.com and sports radio at IP, as well as The Fan up in New York. And he has a wonderful George Costanza meme on his Twitter. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Plenty
Plenty of stuff going on around here. Caps games, Terps games, holidays, eggnog, all of that. Our morning newspaper delivers to your email inbox chock full of news and information and blogs and videos and stories each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life and work off the cookies and the eggnog. Nasty at WNST.net is the way to find me. I am a very available individual. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Now, we're going to be at Buffalo Wild Wings and Owings Mills on Monday night doing the best seat in the house competition as well as the Blazing Wing Eating Challenge. It is our final week for that this year. We've had a great year up in Owings Mills. And then on Tuesday, we'll be in the other side of town in Aberdeen, up in Harford County, with Mike Wallace. We'll be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry with the newest wide receivers. Had a pretty good year with the Ravens. We'll be talking some Steelers, some Dolphins, some Vikings, and certainly some Joe Flacco and Ravens offense with Mike Wallace. We'll swab him for the Bone Marrow Registry, and there goes my hero. And we'll swab you and your loved ones, too. Come on out, give a spit. We'll see you on Tuesday night at Adams Jeep in Aberdeen with Mike Wallace. I am Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.